Chapter 32, Central Island 5. Hansu shrugged at the glares directed at him. Of course he had no thoughts of going up. This was merely a threat. Since he wasn't here to pick up a few more runes. And because of that he couldn't concede any of the crystals that would come out from now on. The lords should have a conversation with me. Everyone made a bitter expression as they approached him. They disappeared from sight to somewhere else while everybody was watching them. TSK. I'm not sure if it was a good thing. Guktai mumbled alone after the conference ended. Hansu's proposal was very simple. I shall take care of all the demons and crystals from now on. He's really a special case. Guktai actually knew that he would concede all the duties of defense and roam about alone. Since there's nobody to stop him even if he did so. It would be just that if he decided to not hunt any of the undead and hunt continuously below and only come back to cut off the demon's head around the time everybody became a mess fighting it. Since the possibility of somebody blocking him if he told them he would take the last hit was a question in itself. Who could block him with such power and invisibility? But Hansu didn't do such things. If that happens the rules crumble apart. Don't worry. I won't negligee the defense either. What is he thinking? What? In conclusion, it meant that he would take over the risk of the demons by himself. If you take into account the strength of the demons, it meant that Hansu took on a huge burden alone even if you were to calculate for the benefit of the crystals. From his actions it seemed like he a person who grew impatient because he couldn't save someone. Though there's nothing bad about it. The demons are peculiar. There wasn't enough information because only one had come out. He didn't know if they all used similar skills or if stronger ones would come out from now on. Since the problem wasn't strength but rather their advantages. It didn't seem like that they couldn't beat Hansu if everyone in the clan charged at him. But things like that had really horrid advantages. Like rock, paper, scissors. It was already hard to kill it due to the fact that it took hits very well but for it to also use area of effect magic. It wasn't that they couldn't kill it if they used skills and traits but at least a few tens of deaths would occur. It wasn't a low number even in terms of the whole and if that were to happen every time the demons came then they might all die off. So Hansu's proposal of him taking over the problem with demons was not bad. And the crystal wasn't that tempting either. That's just a trap. It wasn't really attractive to the clan lords who had to save as many as possible from their clans even if the artifacts that could be gained from collecting those were good and even if the crystal could be used in emergencies. And the reason why they wanted to get it so bad was because it would be very straining if it were to fall into the hands of others. No one knew what sort of crazy thing a sovereign who had attained his own safety would do when things became dangerous. Since they could just escape even if the defenses fall. It's just better for nothing to get solved. Him monopolizing it all was the best option but this was impossible. The many clan lords distribute the crystals. This was a good plan but it didn't really mean much. There won't be much profit if you think of the numbers they would lose while acquiring the crystals as well as the fact that these would make it difficult to determine each other's strength. And there were a few non-clansmen with a bit of strength. These guys won't hesitate to hit them from behind during the decisive moments of taking the crystal. Since they could just take the crystal and go up. In whichever way, it was better if both the demons and crystals didn't exist. The fact that Hansu would take everything didn't differ much from the rule which said the drops from a monster which somebody killed goes to that person. Though it gets on my nerve that one person gets all the crystals. He also looked over the catalogue. Incredibly menacing artifacts were lined up. If he had to choose between these things going into the clan lord's hands or Hansu's hands then he would choose the latter. Drum of Lempo. Isn't it crazy? Such a thing. An object that you could buy with 15 crystals. All of your allies within 300 meters had all of their stats increased by 15% even if you were just holding it. And if you beat the drum, the effects were even more glorious. 1 beat to increase the regeneration speed of those who heard it, 2 beats decrease the perception by 15% but increase strength and agility by 25% and 3 beats even increased resistances. You couldn't use it for 5 days once you beat it 3 times but even the thought of another clan other than his having this was frightening. And no matter how he looked at it, the worth of this thing was not merely 15 crystals. The only reason he could think of as to why it had been listed as 15 crystals was one. It was a price that seemed like could be gained if the clan lords hit and killed each other and fought. If it was an absurd price such as 100, then he might have given up, but 15 was pretty doable. And it seemed like every object on the catalogue was like this. He didn't know if it was intentional, but all the group-use objects were much more formidable than self-use objects. As if it was promoting them to hit and receive hits from each other en masse. Wicked bastards. Guktai clicked his tongue as he thought of the fairies. Then Sung-hoon, one of the clansmen, standing next to him, asked. A person who had gotten the position of a personal guard because he was his friend and most trusted person. Then shall we give up making the special force? Guktai shook his head at those words. There was no rule saying that the special forces had to be used against demons only. Please keep preparing them. And there probably is somebody who has known Hansu since the first tutorial. Please find them no matter what and gain some intel. Whatever you can get. Sung-hoon wholeheartedly nodded his heavy expression at those words. And Guktai threw another sentence at that Sung-hoon. And please go down there and find as many people with special psychic powers. 2,000 people. If you search, then they would exist. Psychic powers that were good against invisibility. No, not just invisibility. He had chosen people based on how good they were against other humans because he had thought power was the most important thing. This was a miscalculation. Everything from that demon to that guy called Hansu. Their opponents were not mere humans, and problems that would be hard to solve with people who could swing their swords well will continue to come up from now on. In order to prepare for all sorts of situations, he needed people with vastly different skills and psychic powers. He had to prepare thoroughly from now on. It's okay as long as I do it properly from now on. He had met a tiger after looking at deers until now. Which meant he just had to prepare a way to deal with the tiger. Since when did humans fight against tigers barehanded? Still, it doesn't seem like it'll be hard to leave this island at this rate. Hansu would take care of demons as others dealt with the undead in turns. He didn't want to acknowledge it, but the rules were set up without much commotion thanks to Hansu. Casualties would constantly occur, but a lot of people could survive at this pace. But I should still prepare. There was no need to think of the tiger as a friend even if it is helping you. Guktai started to prepare as he thought of Hansu, who could be anywhere. Wow. It seems like a lot more of us would survive than I thought. It seems so. Everyone gazed at Hansu, who was fighting fiercely with the demon in the distance. At first there was a bit of a resistance when Hansu said he would monopolize the crystals, but after a while it was clear that it wasn't a bad choice. Yeah. It's already hard for us to have a look at crystals. It's better for that guy to grapple around with demons and for us to all ascend together alive. 20th day of the defense at this moment. The amount of people alive was a huge number of 1,300. 600 had died, but if they had gone up against the demon, and if the crystals were set loose, then the number of the people alive and dead would be reversed. But Hansu, who had cut off the demon's neck, shook his head. Now the hidden piece will activate. Defensive battle. It really didn't suit his personality. But despite that, he had been focusing on the defense whilst jumping around back and forth and killing off demons constantly. He was managing with his best ability in order to gain crystals to arm himself and to set up the rules so no internal fights occurred. He hadn't even taken a step towards the Demon Lord's castle because he was also taking care of those who were trying to aim for his back. Since as long as the hidden piece didn't activate, there was no point in going to the Demon Lord's castle. Hansu mumbled inwardly. I'm not sure if you guys coming back would have been better instead. He had seen and learned from watching Chaldean and S, but he could only imitate them and do as well as them. But Hansu shook his head. If it was something that could be solved with one strong sovereign, then there was no reason for humanity to have gone extinct. He had come back in order to do things that S couldn't. Keeping more than 50% of the people alive by 20th day. I succeeded S. But didn't I win this? I saved even more. Hansu had a broad grin. He couldn't unify them as well as S but had reduced the damage from the demons as much as possible, so he saved even more. And when this happened, the fairy, who couldn't watch the peacefulness of the people, appeared and the hidden piece got activated. It's here. Hello, everybody. It's already the 20th day. The people here have really defended well. Normally there's only around 500 alive by now. At these words the people made expressions full of pride as they still grinded their teeth. Since it felt like they fucked the fairy up from the fact that they dodged the hidden motives of the fairy and had defended in such an excellent way. If it stays like this, then we can ascend without many problems. But the fairy grinned as it looked at those people. But what do we do? It gets really bad from now on. Everyone, do you even know how to get out of this island? Everyone mumbled about at those words. How could they know such a thing? The fairy laughed as it spoke. Very simple. After a month, a portal will open from the crystal you guys had been defending. You guys can ascend higher through that. Here. But there is a very slight problem. That crystal has a limit. Only 500 people can leave through that crystal. What to do? Too many survived. Usually I don't even need to come out, since occasions where more than 500 people surviving don't happen often. Everyone's expressions started to gain an edge. The current survivors were 1,300. And if they defend in this spirit, then at least 1,000 could live. However, the amount that could leave was 500. But then the fairy grinned whilst watching these people. Don't worry too much. There's a place with a much larger crystal. There's more than enough for all of you to escape through in that place. Where is that? As someone asked, the fairy grinned as it pointed to the demon lord's castle, which could be seen from afar. Over there. It normally doesn't work, but I'll start it up now. Hee hee. Hung. At those words, a grand noise started to resonate from one location within the demon lord's castle, and everyone who heard it grinded their teeth. And at the same time the people started to split up. And Hansu also had a cold expression. It starts. Actually, this was more of a surprise event if you looked at it differently. It was a hidden piece that didn't happen unless the requirement of more than 50% living by the 20th day has been accomplished. Since if it was below that, the numbers would reduce to below 500 whilst defending. Would Ace have gone to the demon lord's castle because she wanted to? Ace didn't know what would come out when he went there back then. He didn't know what he would gain, but it was obvious that more people than if they were defending would die. In a situation where Ace wanted as many people to live by combining their strengths, there was no reason for him to go. But there was only one reason which made Ace head towards the demon lord's castle in such a situation. It was all due to this damnable hidden piece. Ace had defended too well. And ironically too many people had survived. While other teams couldn't even keep 200 alive out of 2,000 on average, Ace had kept over 1,000 people alive before the 20th day arrived. It was the result of firmly rejecting the minicrystals and combining the people's strengths. Actually, it wasn't only Ace who had activated this hidden piece. There was a few times when people who had gained amazing traits and skills had fought well against the demons and forcefully united the remaining people in order to keep more than 1,000 people alive has existed. And the people standing in front of the hidden piece had to make a decision. To head towards the demon lord's castle despite the dangers. Or defend, and have a huge battle royal in order to choose the 500 in the end. And after collecting all the intel from the final brigade, there was nobody he knew who had chosen the first option other than S. It was obvious, since at least 500 could survive even if they didn't go. And if the 500 people who could live said that they won't go, the remaining people won't be able to go anyway. Since they won't have enough power. We aren't going. It's better to focus on defending. We don't have a reason to go either. Instead of everyone dying by going, let's save 500. The forces split up and grouped up with clan lords as the center. He had taken these people here. Hansu started to admire S. And thought that he would never be able to become like S in his life. Hansu walked forward as he warmed up his body.